Okay, so good evening. First, I have to apologize. Well, I'm Daniel. I'm working for Turbine Kreuzberg, and we are an e-commerce agency. And we have to saying, our developers, they got balls to deploy on Friday evening, and also the organizers of this event got balls to deploy the new website yesterday. And with this deploy, there was a little mistake in the topic of the talk now. So we are talking today about the topic innovate or die, or if we break it down at the end, we are only doing online shops. So this is the topic of this talk now, and I want to welcome Boris and Kelly. And so first, Boris and Kelly, please introduce yourself and give a warm welcome to the audience.
Or guys, you can leave if actually you expected another talk. So now it's the time to leave or to stay. So would you like to start?
Sure. I'm Chief Product Officer of Commerce Tools. I'm responsible for product management, development, and ops. I came to Commerce Tools about 2 years ago from Oracle, where I was leading microservices. And before that, I was an architect with ATG, which was an early pioneer in the commerce platform space.
Yeah, I'm Boris, CEO with Spryker Systems. It's actually my third company. I founded my first one very early on when I was 17. We built a SaaS shop system, which we sold 3 years later to one of our biggest clients back then. And then I founded a second company, which was a Magento system integrator, and we got acquired by a large company from a NASDAQ-listed company from the US. So now with Spryker in my new role.
So thank you. So today we are talking about e-commerce systems and all that stuff. And so to start, I just want to ask you to tell your opinion about the current status from a technical and systemic perspective regarding the e-commerce system. So what is the hottest shit at the moment? Please tell us your perspective on that. So also from the perspective of Spryker or Commerce Tools.
I think there's a pretty big generational shift right now going on in the commerce platform space. A lot of the commerce platforms at the enterprise level were built in the 90s or 2000s. And today, there's a whole new crop of these, including Spryker, Commerce Tools. There's a handful of them in this new space. And they're newer, they're cloud-based, they adopt modern development principles. And they really support that commerce anywhere vision that we've talked about forever. But these platforms are API-based, they're elastic in some way. It's an entirely new shift, and I think a lot of people out there are really taking to these new platforms. So I think we're at the very early stages of a big replatforming wave out there. But it's an exciting time to be here. There's a lot of new technology out there that can be leveraged, from containers to artificial intelligence to new voice-based systems. There are a lot of new technologies you can apply to commerce, and it's an exciting time to be in the space.
Yeah, maybe just to add to this, I think that so what we have really learned in the last 10 to 15 years is that actually the buyer has changed. So it's not that often the CIO anymore. So budgets do not come from the IT so much. It's really the business that provides the budget, it's marketing, it's sales, so they come up with different requirements, they have different ROI expectations, so they basically want to get their money back much, much faster. So many of the things that make up the platforms that like Commerce Tools, Spryker, etc. today, I think they're not just because we like it this way, right? It's because the methodology has changed, or because the methodology that is required to have short ROIs to basically compete with your digital competitors or with Amazon, the requirements that technology sets in terms of like how fast things change, new devices, new touch points, and you basically have only trial and error and speed as real best practices. At least this is the way we see it. It's not about like being smarter, it's really about being faster and trying out things and drop things that do not work. And this basically then I think leads to what Kelly just said. So it defines this kind of architecture, it defines the way you operate, so the operating model. It defines which components still stay the same. So you, at the end of the day, even if you look at our platforms, of course you have product management capabilities, you have like a cart, you have checkout, you have search, CRM, order management, etc. But I think where the innovation is really happening is at the front, at the front end, so touch points. This is where you need this kind of agility, this kind of speed. And this is, I think, what really determines how we build it and why we build it and why we are moving away from this giant monolithic applications. We all know them, these 24 months, 7-digit projects before you really get something out and running and start verifying it with your customers.
Yeah, you know, Boris and I were talking before this, and I think it's correct what we said, which was as long as one of us is winning it, a deal, I think we're pretty happy with it. You know, as long as it doesn't go to the older platforms out there, and I think it's a win for everyone. So it's a big market.
Yeah, it's not only a big market; it's really a growing market. So it's just why I think there is enough room and enough space. And basically, throughout this day, I attended a couple of talks, and yeah, as Kelly said, there was a lot about like voice and bots and other newer touch points. So it's really starting, right? So for example, if it comes to voice, we really are very excited about voice, at least for B2C context, as we are for IoT, for example, if it comes to B2B. And both touch points or both approaches, they're just starting off. So you would not see like a lot of customers having implemented a proper voice strategy yet. Same for IoT. We have a lot of conversations with our B2B customers, manufacturers, where it makes a lot of sense from a strategic point of view, not only a technical point of view. The technology part is actually very simple for IoT. Yeah, I think the market is growing, and everyone who can like adapt to this will hopefully win at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, you already said that adopting a platform or whatever strategy. So, but we as an e-commerce agency, we also are really in a lot of talks, and the people are hesitating to switch toward a really forward-looking technology. So they are sometimes tend to have a monolith thing. So what is your expectation, or what are your experiences in pitches, like how to communicate the advantage of doing a project with Prycore or commerce tools? What are the points you are really focusing on by showing that it is better to go with you and not to do a project nowadays with a monolith system?
We have a number of use cases that I think we uniquely can do because we're API based, and all these other new vendors that are API based. So we can deploy a full shop to Facebook, for example, over the course of an afternoon, and we'll do that for a lot of our customers. We'll set up IoT bots. You know, we'll set up voice commerce, right? So we show customers how easy it is, and we try to load their product catalog data into our system, and we show them over the course of a couple hours, right, kind of almost mini hackathons, that you can do that. And we challenge them and say, how could you do this with your legacy commerce platform, which was built for a web-only era, right, before the iPhone even existed? And when you start going through those use cases and asking them, and you start asking them about their children and how they're interacting with digital devices, I think they get the picture pretty clearly that you need a post-web shop platform of some sort.
I think the main thing that holds people back is that often old or legacy management and risk management frameworks are still applied in the company. So basically, the decision-making process itself is at some point, maybe not at the level of the people that you talk to initially. They get excited, they have their kids talking to Alexa, and everything is fine. But then, like somewhere in the decision-making process, when like finance and legal and compliance and like many other departments kick in, it starts to become a little bit more complicated, because these guys, they just have what they have. So the risk management tools, their slides, this kind of RFP process where you try to like map the feature requirements to whatever you have, where you try to have a 5 years TCO kind of calculation without knowing how the next year's devices will look like, which is like actually insane, where you have a lot of politics involved, right? Where you very often still, unfortunately, fight a very dominant back-end IT, right? So where you meet the CIO guy, where you have your Oracle SAP installation, where you have like very awkward conversations about which parts and components have to move actually into the front end and do not have to stay, or should not stay in the back-end system, in the ERP system basically anymore, because it just don't make sense if you have 80% or whatever online or digital revenues, right? So why is the order management still like in the back-end system, for example, or what about the PIM? So I think it's really about cracking this. It's not so much like I think the product advantages, if you show them, and as Kelly said, you can demo them, you can do technical due diligence. So we have never lost a deal like in the technical due diligence, for example, right? But it's really more doing your homework and trying to map the old world to the new world, and actually explaining that, especially since these processes take a lot of time, they, by trying to manage a risk, create a much bigger risk, which is like losing time, right? So you're always competing against your competition. So you have a lot of digital capable competitors. You have Amazon, etc. And I said it this morning in my opening keynote. So there is really no incentive to wait. So nothing will be cheaper tomorrow. Customer acquisition won't be cheaper. Access to talent won't be cheaper. Acquisition targets won't be cheaper. Technology, I don't see commerce tools reducing your licenses cost, most likely. Same for us. So no incentive whatsoever. So you should start doing things and not like go over a 9 months PowerPoint kind of bullshit bingo game. And I think this is the main challenge for vendors like us with a good product, and I think developers, everyone gets it, to really crack through this political level.
Okay, thank you. We heard voice ordering or whatever. So from your point of view, what are the hype topics in 2018 and 2019 we all are facing towards? So what are the perhaps new front ends, new ways to interact with an e-commerce system? What are the hype topics? So we won't see them implemented within this year, but perhaps the year after or 2020. What are the hype topics nowadays?
I want to rant quick about conversational commerce. I have a bit of a contrarian view. My Alexa device is plain stupid. And I've tried so many different ways to find meaning and value with it. And it's become a kitchen timer. It plays Christmas music around Christmas. My 6-year-old gets it to play inappropriate music that we wouldn't normally let her listen to. But in terms of anything beyond that, what time does the store close? You know, what's the weather tomorrow in X city? The thing does not work. And I'm a relatively tech person, and if I cannot get this thing to produce any value, I don't think the mass market will. And I think it's going to be quite a while before conversational commerce really becomes a thing. I think chat is one branch that, especially in Asia, has already become mainstream. But voice, I think those device makers have a lot of work to do yet before there's going to be any value. There's also AI and machine learning. So I think those two, or I guess it's really one, hold a lot of long-term promise. But even there, I think 95% of it is vendor hype at this point. We are making real investments in it, and we have 9 machine learning-based APIs we're releasing soon, and that's on top of our existing library. So we actually are doing some, but I think a lot of it out there is just pretty useless at the moment.
What are you doing? So if you say 9 that you will release, what will it be?
We have one for data quality anomaly detection. So if a product does not look like the other ones, we have fraud detection coming out. We have improvements to our category API. So we have quite a few that we're working on right now, and we're going to be doing a lot of public outreach over that. But I think long term, there's going to be value there in the industry as a whole. More immediate term things I'm starting to see, headless. I think just about everybody's going headless these days. That's been great. I think a lot of people are putting digital experience platforms in front of commerce. So that would be something like Adobe Experience Manager or Bloomreach and Hippo. But really having marketing drive the experience and driving the content, I think we're seeing a lot of that out there. We're seeing a lot of GraphQL, and we've recently added support for GraphQL mutations, so you can actually write data instead of just reading it. So we're really investing in that. Yeah, I think those are the ones off the top of my head.
Okay, so maybe to make it a little bit more controversial here, I would at least disagree for the voice part. So my Alexa works much better than my voice assistant in my high-class BMW, which is just embarrassing.
Maybe it's an operator error. I'm not sure.
It's really if I try to talk to my car, this is really embarrassing, right, for the German car industry.
Yes.
So, but yeah, so I think Alexa, especially like given given the progress that you can see like in the last 18 months. So you really get the feeling that it's improving, and there are a lot of good use cases. Obviously, some skills are better, some skills are worse. But again, if you think about it, I think at the end of the day, it's and this is the way we look at it. It's especially for many B2C cases, it's really an ultimate front end. If you can make it work, it will be an ultimate front end. So it's really hard to imagine, especially like for commodity FMCG kind of goods, right? That someone will really want to like open the MacBook and open the browser and open an application and type something into search and go on the category page, go on the PDP, put it into cart, check it out, right? Instead of like saying, order this, reorder that, right?
And so I agree, for a lot of the commodity products, right?
Yeah.
Alexa,
so
send me some toilet paper, right? That's a very clear voice commerce use case. But you know, buy me a Hawaiian shirt for my vacation in 2 weeks.
You also won't buy like your next party dress, right? So like it's which is also an interesting. It has some implications how we see, for example, the importance of PIM reducing and the importance of CRM basically increasing, because like in this screen less or screen small kind of world, PIM is not that important. Like enriching your data, having 150 attributes like in a correct way that you need it in your desktop environment to really be able to sort, filter, etc., becomes less important. Already on a mobile device, actually, where the customer engagement is different, where you want to show like 10 results, but in a very personalized way, and the same, of course, for voice, right? So you do not get like 10 results for one request. You basically expect to get the one product that matches your preferences best. So for voice, I would a little bit disagree. I think like for B2C, this is very, very interesting, and also from a strategic point of view, we had a very interesting voice bot panel, and I also said that it's really a good customer acquisition channel, so it does not have to be necessarily transactional from day one, right? So a lot of cases that we see, and also if you look at the Alexa skill store, you will see that there are actually close to non-transactional skills, of like a very limited amount. Many of them are very informational, so asking about information, asking about like the weather, etc., seems to be something that Alexa and the NLUs can handle better nowadays. In terms of like roadmap, or in terms of things that we are excited about, so yeah, so it's definitely voice, it's definitely IoT for B2B, so which is again technology-wise not a big problem for a headless system. It comes more down to the sensors that you have and how you can connect actually to the physical device. But we think that for B2B and for manufacturers, this is going to be huge. We are we are not big believers in VR actually, which maybe this one will be surprising here.
I agree with you, by the way.
But but AR we like a lot. So I don't know who of you has tried the AR apps that basically are available already in the Apple App Store with the iOS 11. I spent a couple of €100 to install more or less all of them and to play around, and for the first iteration or second iteration, I have to say they are very amazing. So and I can think of many transactional use cases. So even the IKEA one, for example, is just cool, right? So you really have your furniture, you can place it into your living room. It really makes sense. So it's not like just a game. Of course, there is a lot of bullshit out there, but it really makes sense. So AR we think is cool. We are a little bit more skeptical, or we look closer to things like blockchain, for example. So we have a couple of customers where smart contracts make sense, especially when you try to optimize supply chain and many other things. So we have a couple of projects where we have done investments and we are doing investments into this. But this is definitely, let's say, at least if you look at our roadmap, less. It would be underrepresented in comparison to maybe the search volume that you would find for this terms on Google. So this, I think, is
exactly.
So you also think, Kelly, that blockchain perhaps could be a hype?
I 100% believe it is.
Okay. 100.
I mean, there are legit use cases in banking, for example. You know, if you're a Venezuelan semi-dictator and you want to launch a cryptocurrency, fine. I think there are some interesting applications in food chain, right? If you want to track the history of the food, but it's going to be a long time before every player in the chain is going to be. I just don't see use cases. I think it's really interesting, but I don't see practical use cases besides cryptocurrency and maybe some things in banking.
And maybe just to add to this, I think at least like for vendors like us, I think the problem is even worse. So it's very, even for the use cases that we see. So there are a couple of use cases in the automotive that we have, in the food, in supply chain, and in retail that we are involved. But even for them, it's very hard for us to come up with a generic, like solution feature set. So you have like very dedicated kind of setups. You have your private smart contracts kind of network. So like to provide, let's say, a feature or something like out of the box, which would fit to at least a decent amount of customers is I think for us very hard. So that's why definitely this.
Well, and the commerce platform is the exact wrong place to implement blockchain anyway, right? It has to be something more at the core of the business. And even then, every actor, right, everybody along the value chain would have to contribute to it. And I mean, if you look at the supply chains of a lot of these big companies, it's paper-based, it's disconnected. Like you can't even get an accurate product description, right? So to try to ask 10 different vendors to, contribute to a block, it just doesn't make sense. Sorry.
No.
I wish I could think of a better use case. I just can't.
Okay. What I want to know, so as you are living in the US and you in Germany, so from your point of view, what is the difference if you look at the development in e-commerce systems between the US and Europe, or is there any difference? And if yes, what is the difference?
Yeah, I live in the US, but my team is all here. So I've seen this now for 2 years. There are a couple differences. I think first is a lot of Americans are working for venture-backed companies with too much money, and they treat it almost as a lottery, right? It's how am I going to get rich in the next 6 months? And you find a lot of developers like that, especially in the Bay Area. They want tons and tons of equity, and they're not going to stay for longer than 6 months if it doesn't work out. They're not owners, right? It's more of a how can I optimize my personal finances in the next 6 months type of mentality, where I like the Germans are very focused on building, even startups, building long-term sustainable businesses. And I really appreciate that, and that's a big difference from Silicon Valley. Also, just in terms of time horizons, people in the Bay Area, and US in general, but they're building applications with a time horizon of 6 months to a year, maybe, right? With the understanding that in 6 months or a year, we'll see if the product works, and then we'll rewrite it from scratch. But the problem is it never gets rewritten. You end up with Facebook, which is still running, old. It's very expensive Band-Aids and glue on top of it, right? And I like the German focus on, and I know it's a stereotype, but it's true, on building long-term sustainable things. It has been a bit of a challenge. Sometimes I think our team is a bit too conservative, which is a good thing, right? Things tend to stay in beta a little bit too long. Some things take a little while to get built because they're looking forward for 10 years, not for 10 months. But overall, I really like the culture, and it's been a great learning experience. And maybe someday I'll take some of that back to Silicon Valley.
I mean, we are not active in the US market, at least not with people on the ground yet. Still, we have a couple of customers there. So it's still, like, from what we see, it's a very competitive market, even more competitive than here. We have a lot of the legacy platform players still aggressively investing. We had very awkward deals that we have lost, actually, because these companies acted in a very insane way and basically financed the entire projects and gave 99% discounts on licensing. So basically just were afraid of losing logos. So we don't see this happening that much in Germany. I think the let's say competitive landscape is much more balanced, and it does not. So we do not have these crazy situations. Interestingly enough, it's Germany tends to be like this country which produces all these e-commerce companies. Like many of them, or the majority actually, not maybe the majority, but many of them that we know, they came from Germany. So same for PIM, by the way. So for whatever reason, although we have a smaller market, we are the ones generating and building these technologies. So which I find like very, very interesting, and we are very proud of it. We also see that, like in terms of talent, so we have, for example, 21 as of today, 21 different nations in our organization. We are literally printing blue cards and bringing people from all around the world, from Brazil, from Finland, from Israel, from the Arabic countries, from Russia and Soviet Republic, etc. It's very interesting. So many of these top engineers, they really have the opportunity to go anywhere, and they really decide very often to go to Europe, to come to Berlin, instead of like going to Boston or going to San Francisco. And the ones who do, I have a couple of friends who went there, and were very happy to get like a high 6-digit salary, but then they ended up like paying endless amounts of taxes and living in a 1-bedroom apartment and
It's
having a lot of debt
It's
after 2 years.
It's terrible quality of life there. It really is, and a lot of people are moving away. It just, and the lifestyle is very much you're chained to your desk until you IPO or until you have an exit of some sort, right? That's the attitude, and it's frustrating.
So, and if you look at your customers, so the US companies, so it's also a stereotype, but they are not that risk averse, so that they are able and willing to take the risk and just invest in a system which is offering future developments in a better way, so not a monolith system like that. If you compare this to European or German customers, so there are always a lot of anxieties to invest in an uncertain situation and to do it not like a waterfall, just to do it in an agile way. So is this stereotype true, or are the difference if you look at your customers? As you said, also you have customers in the US.
Yeah, so yeah, I think it's true. So, but I think the important part here is what you just said. So this investment decision under this uncertain market conditions. So this is basically the reality, right? So this is something that you just have to accept, and if you do, then then your mindset changes. It's very hard, like for German companies, and I know exactly what you're talking about. It's very like, especially when you have this SAP kind of environment and still have a lot of like old school kind of decision makers in the IT. For my personal my personal belief is way too much power in this back-end IT kind of department still, right? And even if you talk to these corporates and if you can convince them building up digital units, they're doing everything wrong, everything that you can. So starting from hiring this front-end developers, they still report to the CFO, to the controller, to the CIO, setting these departments up in the wrong way, wrong methodology, wrong scoping, 500 lines, Excel bullshit bingo kind of list of features that no one really needs, wrong ROI expectations, etc., etc. So it's at least for Germany, again, I cannot really compare it to the US. So the US customers that we are working with, they were fine, but I just don't have enough, let's say, quantity, right, to put it into perspective. But for Germany, yes, it's definitely true. And I think, you know, the good news is time will take care of this. So this is like the good news for all of us. So eventually these people will just die, right? So they will, die in a way that they will just leave these companies, either because they leave or just because they will be forced to leave. We have seen this happening actually a lot, because especially for Germany, we have the luxury of having a lot of hidden champions, we are a manufacturing country, but they are all under big pressure. They have not invested enough. And we tend to say that you typically have two good triggers for action, and one is ambition and the other one is fear, right? We as a vendor, we don't care which one it is. Of course, an ambition-driven approach is always better if you can do something because you are the category leader in a certain category offline and you want to be the same online, fine, right? If you're doing this because you just have not invested enough, you hope that internet will go away, then you hope that mobile will go away, nothing goes away, and now you wake up and you see that you might have maybe another 5 years of positive EBITDA to really invest, and otherwise your market will be just gone, regardless of your billions that you're making offline. Then you start to act, and there is a lot of pressure from the shareholders of these companies, from the PEs, a lot of pressure from the private equity owners that basically push the management, they push the boundaries, they push and challenge these risk management frameworks they have. So it's much easier than we thought 3 years ago. When we were founded, we actually thought that it will be close to impossible with this kind of system to sell into a corporate, B2B kind of corporate. but now I think the majority of our pipeline are customers from this segment because they have so much pressure.
We have a slightly different perspective because most of our customers are B2C, and also a very substantial number of our customers come from the US. And we see in the US there is a segment of laggards out there in terms of technology, and it tends to be the older retailers. And they still don't really have an idea what they want to do. So they tend to be very conservative, and they'll just buy whatever one of the big 3 tech vendors happens to be selling that day, or whichever one they have a long relationship with. Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah. So, and that, you know, that it's fair, but it's very short-sighted, and I don't think it's going to work well for them in the long run. What we see in the US, which I think is fairly unique to the US market, is people are not they're not buying platforms. They're building large pieces of it themselves, and they're augmenting it with APIs from vendors like us. So it's more of the Lego block style approach. And we saw this at the very top end with Amazon. They really started this, and then Walmart did it, and then Target did it. In the UK, you see Tesco having done this already. And they don't go out and look for a new platform. They go out and say, over the course of the next 6 months, we're going to go to we're going to swap out our product APIs. We're going to swap out our category APIs. And we'll win just that business. And then a few months later, we'll win maybe discounts. A few months after that, maybe we'll win the shopping cart. And it tends to be a very incremental purchasing process over time, which is good for us, right? And it works really well. But nobody in the US at the top end of the market, especially the more innovative companies, are buying platforms anymore. They want granular pieces from different vendors, including us.
So somehow you have to be creative to adapt these developments to your product as well. So my question is, I don't know whether creative is the right way, but how is your ability to adapt all these developments, and not only adapt, just to be a leader for certain developments, to make sure that you as well will go with the market, be on top, be in front of all innovations and all this stuff? What do you think? How creative you have to be?
So I mean, just to maybe give some hard facts so it is easier to understand. So I mean, for us, everything that we tell our customers is true for us, right? So we need to be as paranoid as we want our customers to be, because somewhere 2 guys in the garage are disrupting us and building whatever the next cool platform is. And it goes for everything, like this ROI expectation methodology. So for example, we are releasing on average 3 to 4 releases a day, right? So our ability to release new functionality is quite significant. We have in parallel, I think right now, 19, so we call it technology streams, which basically are different teams working on different functionalities. So it's quite a lot. It's not like 1 stream, 2 streams, so 19 streams in parallel, which of course requires a big product management organization, endless engineering talent, etc. So and we are building and doing it exactly the same way we want our customers to do it. So we have some streams that are very, let's say, stable, things that we clearly know, clear demand from our customers, partners, etc. Some evolutionary stuff, but we also have like some, I would not call it like R&D, but let's say we call it experimental bets actually. So things that like voice, for example, right, where we don't know actually what the exact functionality will look like at the end of the day, but we have we make some guesses, right? We make some, of course we try to validate it, but we rather would build 3, 4 different skills or 1, 2 different kind of bots, put them out as fast as we can, try to see whatever is adopted, what makes sense, and kill the ones and take them behind the bar and shoot the ones that are not good and do not perform well, and continue investing into the others. So I think for a vendor like us, this is the best thing we can do, beside, of course, listening to customers, listening to partners, listening to market. Don't listen to consultants that much. Don't write that many PowerPoint slides. Yeah, I think this is it, right? And we also incentivize our management actually. So maybe just to give another fact, so we even have a management kind of technique. We call it 70-40. So we actually, it's a little bit different from what people are used to when they come from different companies. We want the management team always to make like maximum 70% safe bets, what we call safe bets in their decisions. and 40% experimental beds. So basically, in a traditional company, you would be, if you would come to a management meeting, you would not be prepared, would not have 3 different, like proposals on the table. If it's something that you would like to get approval for is not validated, you would be sent home to do your homework, and we do it the exactly way around. So we would punish you if you would be always too prepared, always doing just safe bets, always coming and spending a lot of time, a lot of weeks research for things. We reduce it, we limit it by with this 70% rule. Say like 70% is fine, but 40% of the decisions need to be experimental bets, because you cannot, if you don't do this way, then you just do things in a very if you want to grow like exponentially, as we do, for example, as a company, it's the only way to do it. Otherwise, you will just be too slow. And as I said, time is the biggest and most important KPI for us.
We're very similar. We have APIs, and we publish API contracts. Over time, those APIs become more and more functional, and we release to production multiple times a day as well. And then internally, we have 7 different teams. It's not 19, but still 7 is pretty reasonable. And they're vertical full stack teams, each having their own little roadmap, their own dev staff, their own stand-ups, right? Everything is very self-contained within the vertical feature team. And that, coupled with our ability to release multiple times a day, is a pretty winning combination for us. And then, of course, all the standard things, right? So meeting with customers, meeting with partners, talk to analysts every once in a while, so it's pretty clear what we need to do and where we need to innovate most of the time. And I think we've got a pretty good team.
Okay, so as we're getting to the end of our talk, just one last question from my side, and then you are all invited to just raise your hand and ask a question to the guys here. What is your personal thought about 2018? At the end of 2018, when you look back to the year, what is the biggest achievement of your company? Like
measured by what?
No, measured by whether it's innovation, or whether you just did a great revenue, or whether you won some customers, some cool
hopefully
cases.
All of that.
Hopefully all of it. But okay, so then let's focus on the hype topic we talked before. So what will be the most innovative feature or service or whatever what you will implement within the year 2018?
We might have implemented it already. So we now, with APIs, the challenge with all commerce platforms is customizing things. So you can write like a proxy layer, basically, right? So you wrap the out-of-the-box commerce platform with custom functionality, and that's fine. But now you have a very tightly coupled situation where you have custom code that depends on the underlying platform working one exact way only, right? Because there's a lot of coupling involved. And something we released in January, and we've been rolling it out across all of our APIs, is the ability to inject serverless functions into our platform. So at specific execution points, we will actually call out to registered hooks, and it can be one, it can be many. You can chain them together, you can add dependencies, so that if you want to change how your inventory is calculated, or your promotions are evaluated, or coupon codes are done, you can call to AWS Lambda functions, and your customizations and extensions live in those platforms. So there's no need for hosting, no need for anything. It's a really beautiful model of extensions, and we're really proud of it as a platform.
Okay, so basically I've shared a couple of roadmap items already, at least the ones that I can disclose. So I think that really, especially towards fall this year, where we will have some bigger trade shows, I think we will really be able to demo some sorts of the voice and bot capabilities that we think make a lot of sense for our customers. We have now a lot of investments that are going into IoT, so we are very, very interesting customers, and we have some good technology partnerships with especially with some middleware providers or some sensor manufacturers that obviously you always need if you try to connect to a device. And I think we definitely will be able to show these customer use cases and show the technology throughout or later this year. In terms of other items, I mean, as I said, so some parts of the roadmap are very let's say, non-experimental. So we have a lot of B2B investments that we make, a lot of investments, of course, in APIs. Also like in developer tools, SDK, middleware, etc. So things that just developers need to keep up with the productivity. I think we will definitely try to look deeper into what machine learning can really do, and if this is an area of investment that we should focus more on. As I said, so we have a lot of streams, so it's like 18, 19 streams. It's quite a lot. So we also need some time to digest whatever we do, whatever we build. It's not like about, hey, let's do even more and like put everything on the road right away. And still, although we are talking about all these like future technologies, still many customers struggle with very basic things. Like I can give you one good example. So we will have a lot of investment into something very, very, very traditional, like UX and UI in the backend, especially like from an ergonomic point of view, right? So still people use backend, call center, etc. a lot. So if you can save a second here, 5 clicks there, you know, so it's like a huge productivity gain for these teams, even though it does not sound that sexy maybe, right? But it's still an important investment. It's still like a refactoring that needs to be done. It still like enables customer service agents, category managers, etc., doing the work just in a more efficient way. It's not always about like, let's put as many hype topics on the table as we can. It's really also about serving real people, real world, today's problems.
Okay, thank you. So now it's up to you. If somebody has a question, just raise your hand or stand up.
Everyone wants to party now.
Yeah, okay. So
so one. So we have not. So for now we are focusing on basically on 2 languages. So to be honest with you, we're focusing on English, focusing on German. So just because of the use case that we have in front of us, we have not. We simply did not have the challenge. It's definitely something that we will expand. For now, it's really German and English. And there was, I mean, good for us is that all the technologies and all the APIs and all the tools that you can get, be it like on Alexa side, on Google side, etc., they are like English based, right? So no challenges with that. German is a little bit different. You can clearly see it when you talk to your Alexa in German. It's less sophisticated than the German ones. But I think you also, and for us, we have to clearly separate. So I don't see us like, you know, doing so we will not invest our budget, our R&D into these like language processing technologies that much. It just doesn't make sense, because if you want to improve them a lot, you really need scale, you need a lot of data, you need a lot of use cases. So I think we will try to have some kind of best of breed approach, try to leverage as much as we can. On the other hand, try to build a system that is headless, that provides the right API, that makes an integration with whatever the front end is very simple. So as I said this morning, we had a good hackathon, for example, today, which was planned for 90 minutes and built Alexa skill integrated with the system. And I think the first one was done after 32 minutes. So building a full operational Alexa skill that is working integrated with our system like in 32 minutes. I think this is more the KPI for us. How fast can you integrate these new touch points?
More questions? Okay, then thank you for your attendance and thank you for the talk. So now we all have a nice party and enjoy the evening. Thank you.